Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network. I am your host, Jonah Malkin. Thank you so much for joining me every Monday and Wednesday morning from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Am I glad that you are joining me, joining Morning Joe, and most importantly, joining J&J Media. We appreciate you making us a part of your weekday morning plans. A lot to get into today. with the NFL. I'm going to talk a lot about NBA free agency coming up. So there's a lot of exciting stuff. And then, of course, a great Malkin's Moments for you every single week. I always provide for Malkin's Moments. That's one of my favorite segments. So I got a great one coming up. You're going to want to stick around for that. So we're going to start off with the NFL. And I want to start with this Sunday night football game of the week. Right. Last night, Kansas City Chiefs, and of course, the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to touch on the Kansas City Chiefs in a second, but I have to say this. Yes, I know Mahomes outdueled Derek Carr. I understand that, but I was extremely impressed with the Las Vegas Raiders last night. Not only do you beat the Chiefs earlier in the season, you win that game 40-38 at Arrowhead Stadium. Now you have the target on your back. You return home to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. The defending champs are coming. And you know that they want to put a beat down on you. They want to put a smackdown on you, given the fact that you took a victory lap around Arrowhead Stadium the first time when you won. And now you come back and again, I love the chippiness of this game. This Raiders team does not fear Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They did not fear them. They do not fear them. And they will not fear them if they match up somehow in the postseason. If the Raiders can make it into the postseason, which I'll break down their chances, which are actually looking pretty good, given that they've got a light schedule the remainder of the way. But Derek Carr, listen, I'm not saying he's an MVP candidate right now because he's not. But 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, had a tremendous game again yesterday, 23-31, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, a very late game interception. Really, that was only in the final 28 seconds when he was forced to make something happen and throw a play down the field. The game was already over. Unfortunately, that registered as a turnover for him, but that's not his fault. That doesn't really matter to me. That's pretty trivial at this point. But you look at the makeup of this Raiders team. First of all, they score on their first they score touchdowns on their first 2 opening touches. Kansas City matches them. Then the Raiders score a field goal. The Raiders scored on 3 of their first 4 first half possessions. Not of their first half possessions, of all 4. They scored on 3 of their 4 first half possessions. Extremely impressive. The Chiefs matched them for the most part. And then you had this seesaw of a game. And listen, I said this in the beginning of the season. Darren Waller, their tight end for Las Vegas, for the Raiders, is fantastic. 515 receiving yards as a tight end, leads the team. In a way, these two teams are similarly constructed. They're similarly built. The Chiefs' leading receiver is their tight end, Travis Kelce, who had another fantastic game, 800 plus something yards, 3rd most receiving yards in the NFL as a tight end. But this kid, Waller, is physical. He's fast. He's big. He's 6'6", about 260. He can run. He can block. He's got tremendous feel, tremendous hands. And then I've raved about Josh Jacobs before. I said this last week. I think Josh Jacobs is one of the top running backs in the NFL. And I think you can make an argument he's a top 2, top 3 running back in the AFC. I think Derrick Henry reminded all of us that he's probably the best running back in the AFC yesterday. I'm going to touch on that game in a second. But the Raiders aren't scared of the Chiefs. And I've seen the improvement of John Gruden and especially Derek Carr. I said this last week. My most surprising team in the AFC is the Las Vegas Raiders. This was a team that couldn't even sniff the playoffs last year. Could not even sniff the playoffs. They were 7-9 last year, but it didn't really feel like, while they were trending in the right direction, no one really thought that they could make this kind of leap. And they're 6-4 right now. And we're in a prime position to be the first team to actually complete a season series sweep of the Chiefs since 2014. And it would have been the first sweep against Andy Reid as the head coach of the Chiefs. So Josh Jacobs played well. Darren Waller played well. But Derek Carr, the influence that John Gruden has had on Derek Carr, now we're seeing it. Now we're seeing him mold Derek Carr into the player that we've expected him to be. Now we're seeing the old Derek Carr who threw for over 4,000 yards in 2016 and was an MVP candidate. That's the Derek Carr that we're seeing. And listen, the Raiders looked great and they played great. But again, you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes leads the Chiefs on a late 2-minute game-winning drive. Surprisingly, that's the first game-winning drive for Patrick Mahomes in the final 2 minutes of a game of his career. That's how dominant he's been. He's never had to lead his team in the final 2 minutes of a game to lead him to a game-winning drive. It's the first time of his career. And this is the problem when you're playing a team like the Chiefs. It's never about the opponent. Because at the end of the day, you as the opponent have to play flawlessly. You have to play a perfect game. Your imposing pitcher, you have to throw a perfect game. You have to throw a complete game. You have to throw a shutout. The Chiefs don't have to do that. They really don't. The Chiefs, every time they touch the ball, they're an offensive threat. Every time they touch the ball, they're a threat to score. They're a threat to put up points. They're a threat to wear down your defense. And I've been so impressed with their ability to adapt, to evolve. Why do humans exist? We exist because we evolved the best. We exist because we were able to adapt to our surroundings. Natural selection. The Chiefs just find ways to win. They can beat you with their defense, but now we're starting to see Patrick Mahomes' name called more often now. Now is when we're starting to see his greatness shine the brightest and shine through. And Mahomes is playing like an MVP right now. I think he is the MVP. I'd give him a slight nod over Russell Wilson at this very moment in time. Most passing yards in the NFL, 3,035 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now, the interesting thing is the 2 interceptions he's thrown have come against this team, against the Raiders. So the Raiders are doing something right. But he's completing 68% of his passes. Again, a top 3 QBR, top 2 QBR in the NFL. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, over 3,000 yards. The only player in the NFL to throw for over 3,000 yards so far. I mean, he's been tremendous, and they've effectively locked up their 5th straight AFC championship last night. But again, I'll say this though: if the Raiders can find a way to make the postseason, this is not going to be an easy out for a team. This is not going to be an easy out. This is a difficult, tough matchup for most of these opponents to face the Raiders. You look at the remaining schedule, they have at Falcons, at Jets. Those should be wins. Versus the Colts, versus the Chargers, versus the Dolphins, and at the Broncos. They should go at least 4-2 to be 10-6 and have a chance at the postseason. They might even finish 5-1 to close out that stretch. In which case they'd go 11-5. So I was extremely impressed with the Raiders despite losing to the Chiefs last night. But again, you have to play flawless football to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the reality. And the Chiefs don't have to play perfectly to beat you. And they've proven that once again. The other team that's proven that they can win by imposing themselves through grit, determination, and tenacity is the Tennessee Titans. I've seen them play the Baltimore Ravens now twice in the same calendar year. They've beaten the Ravens now twice in this past 2020 calendar year. They beat them last year in the divisional round, 28-12, laid the smackdown on the MVP Lamar Jackson and the Ravens in Baltimore last year, and then they did it to him again today or yesterday. It's unbelievable to me when you see an opposing team impose their will on the home team. One of the sports that I love to play the most, I'm a big tennis player. I'm an avid tennis player. If I don't say so myself, I'm a pretty damn good tennis player. And I used to play tennis tournaments growing up all the time. Competitive tennis tournaments, USTAs, the like. My style of play, however, was never conducive to beating guys who didn't hit the ball that hard, guys who would kind of grind you down. And the reason is because that's the style of play that I played. I never went for the winners. I never tried to kill shots. I never tried to overhit the ball in tennis. I was consistent, got balls back, and I would grind opponents down. But that's why when I would go up against the best players in these tournaments in California, I did very well against them. And I beat a lot of them, is because opponents would try and kill the ball, try and overhit, try and go for winners. And I'd rely on my endurance to keep the ball in play, stay consistent, and wear them down and grind them out mentally. The Tennessee Titans now once again have psychologically beaten down the Baltimore Ravens. That's a game that the Ravens should have won yesterday. They had an opportunity to win down the stretch. Lamar Jackson had an opportunity in the red zone, 3rd and goal, as opposed to having to settle for a game-tying field goal to send it to overtime. You got to convert. And they lost in overtime 30-24 yesterday because Derrick Henry reminded all of us why he's the best running back in the AFC, maybe the best running back in the NFL. 133 yards rushing, a 22-yard game-winning rushing touchdown yesterday in overtime. Actually, more like a 28 rushing touchdown in overtime to ice the game. That was his 50th career rushing touchdown yesterday. He's a beast. He absolutely is a beast. And this is where the Tennessee Titans are at their best, is when they can run the football, establish the ground game, and psychologically and physically wear you down, grind you down. They just find a way to do that. And again, Lamar Jackson struggled once again throwing the football, 17 of 29, 188 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, QBR 40.5. In the 3 biggest games this season for the Ravens, versus the Chiefs, versus the Steelers, and now versus the Titans, Lamar Jackson has had QBRs of 31, 14.5, and 40. That averages out to less than 30 QBR on a scale of 0 to 100 in the 3 biggest games of the season. He's going to have to prove that he can beat teams throwing the football down the field. He did that last year for the majority of the season. He hit on those home run plays last season. We're not seeing it right now. we're not seeing it right now. He's been struggling. He hasn't passed for over 2,000 yards yet this season. He's getting close. His accuracy has dipped. He's at around 62% now on the season. And he's going to have to play better because otherwise they're not going to win games. They're 6-4. They're in trouble of potentially missing the playoffs. And you look at this roster and you're saying to yourself, how in the world could the Ravens miss the playoffs? They could. They absolutely could. So Lamar Jackson's going to have to play better. And especially in the passing game, if this team has a chance at making the postseason and actually making a run. They're 6-4 right now. There's some other teams that are right in the thick of it. The Browns are ahead of them at 7-3. The Titans now ahead of them at 7-3. The Colts are ahead of them right now at 7-3. Now they beat the Colts, so they're only one game back there. The Raiders are at 6-4. They got to take care of business right now. And the Baltimore Ravens, they got a big matchup against the Steelers, who are undefeated at 10-0 on Thanksgiving. That's a huge measuring stick for them. So they need to find a way to wake up and get their act together, because otherwise they're going to miss the postseason. Okay, I want to transition to the Indianapolis Colts. I said this last week. I said this really in week one. Actually, the first ever show that I did, I predicted that the Indianapolis Colts were my dark horse team to make the postseason. Now you can say, well, Jonah, are you really going out on a limb there? I would say so. You look at their roster, it's fantastic. Again, Xavier Rhodes, DeForest Buckner's there. Justin Houston came from Kansas City. Darius Leonard is a beast as a linebacker. The biggest question mark that I had was, could Phillip Rivers play well enough to not screw it up at 38? Could he play well enough to give his defense a chance? Jonathan Taylor was fantastic yesterday, 22 carries, 90 rushing yards. Should have ran for over 100 yards if it wasn't for frickin' 10 holding penalties against the Colts. I've never seen a game that featured so many holding penalties on the offensive line. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Just put your hands up. Quentin Nelson, you're a fantastic offensive lineman from Notre Dame. Just put your hands up. What are you doing? And they got bailed out because Aaron Rodgers was having another one of those really special games yesterday. 27 of 38, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you make a tremendous catch. Now, it was a even better throw, 47 yards on a 3rd and 10. Rodgers falling into his end zone, throws it, 47-yard heave up the middle. And Scantling is able to focus long enough to actually secure the football and make the catch. And then your second touch in overtime, you fumble it at your own 30, and it costs you the game. But it's the combination of that, their special teams, 28-28. The Packers fumble the ball. I forget the player who was the return guy. He fumbles it, and your defense is able to hold the Colts to a field goal, but they're up 28-14 in the first half. They've got to find a way to close out these games if you're the Packers in a competitive NFC. And this could have been a huge opportunity for them at 7-2 to take a commanding lead, or at least a temporary lead in the NFC, and be the number 1 seed. And then it's on the Buccaneers to see if they were going to win against the Rams, and then obviously the Saints. Blown opportunity for the Packers, because Rodgers had another one of these stellar performances, but I give credit to the Colts for finding a way to win a ball game. And again, I said that was going to be the key. Could Phillip Rivers play like an adequate quarterback? And he played his best game as a starting quarterback for the Colts yesterday. 24-36, 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception, 107 quarterback rating. He actually made some plays yesterday, and they're going to need that. They're going to continue to need Jonathan Taylor to run the football the way that he's been doing it, because this can be a really special team as long as Phillip Rivers plays well, because their defense is elite, one of the top defenses in the league, even though yesterday wasn't a good example of that, but still. Okay, some quick hitters in the NFL, just really quickly. I just need to say this. So the Browns beat the Eagles yesterday, 22-17. I understand that the conditions were rainy, inclement weather. Carson, can you stop turning the ball over, man? Another 2 interceptions. I think he's thrown 14 interceptions this year. He's on pace to match, or maybe come up a little short of Jameis Winston throwing 30 interceptions last season. Stop turning the ball over. I understand that maybe you don't have the best wide receiving core, but Dallas Goedert's still there. Jalen Reagor is still there. No, these aren't game breakers, but come on, man. He keeps turning the ball over, and I can't keep defending him right now. It's just, I cringe every time I watch Carson Wentz play. And I know he's got talent, but he's just got to be smarter with his decision making. He threw an awful pick six early in the game. The Browns, Baker Mayfield doesn't even throw the ball anymore. They pretty much just give the ball to Nick Chubb and say, okay, rush for 100 yards and ice this game. And he does that. And then their defense makes plays. But that was just Carson. Come on, man. You got to be better. Then the Saints yesterday beat the Falcons 24-9. Listen, in the interim for these 4 games, sure, I think that Taysom Hill can win you some football games. I do. But yesterday, to me, despite him rushing for 2 touchdowns, yes, he was accurate, 18-23, 233 yards. I get that. He's not the long-term plan for the Saints. And I think yesterday elucidated that. He's not. If you're trying to convince me that this guy is your future quarterback, then the Saints have a problem. I mean, unfortunately, he's not the long-term solution for them. He just isn't, in my mind. And yeah, again, I know you look at the stats and you say, well, he was super accurate, 18-23, 233 yards, a touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns. I get that. But if you look at him play, most of the passes don't look like crisp passes to me. I don't know. I watch Taysom Hill, and I'm thinking, yes, you can get a little bit more creative with the play calling if you're Sean Payton, but something just didn't feel right watching him quarterback that team yesterday. Now, he didn't turn the ball over, so from that perspective, you're saying, well, it's an upgrade from Jameis Winston, but at the same time, I'm just not convinced that Hill is your guy long-term. I don't think we saw that. I don't think we can see him hit on those long down-the-field passes. I don't see that happening. He's got a great receiver in Michael Thomas who can make him look good. But unfortunately for the Saints, unfortunately for Taysom Hill, I don't think yesterday showed that when Drew Brees retires, he's the guy you want to give the keys to the Maserati to. I just don't see that happening. And then finally, Cowboys beat the Vikings yesterday. Listen, the Vikings are the most frustrating team probably this year. Just when they had won 3 straight games, they were starting to hit their stride. They were making a run. Then, of course, they pull a Kirk Cousins, they pull a Mike Zimmer, and they lose again. They lose to the Cowboys. This was the biggest game of the season for the Cowboys. This resuscitated their entire season. This salvaged their entire season. And now, despite how atrocious and putrid the NFC East is, no team is out of it. The Cowboys are firmly in the thick of things again. The Washington football team leads the division now, I believe. And the winner of the NFC East is going to host a playoff game. It's unbelievable to me that no team is fully ahead or completely out of it. Every team's got a chance, and the Cowboys surprisingly still have a chance. They still have a chance. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Morning Joe, right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Lot to get into with the NBA free agency. Boy, did weekend number one get off to a blazing start. Wow. I can't wait to talk about this stuff. This is super exciting for me. By the way, hashtag JMalk, hashtag Morning Joe. Comment, like, subscribe. I'll give you guys shout outs along the way. So the Lakers revamped their schedule, their team. Lakers revamped their entire roster. There's a reason why it's so difficult to repeat in a major sport. It's one of the hardest things to do is to win again, to win a championship a second consecutive time. Because the hunger and the desire isn't always there across the entire roster. You always have to make improvements. You have to infuse locker rooms with fresh blood, with fresh desire, and fresh hunger. You have to. You have to do that. And the Lakers, instead of standing pat, went out and aggressively acquired new players and massive upgrades. Because again, one of the most difficult things is the monotonous day-to-day of a regular season. That's one of the most difficult things. And you need new players that have that drive, that have that motivation, that have that sense of purpose to want to play for something, that want to get up for those games. That's the other issue. Are you going to get up for that regular season game? Are you going to get up for the first round of the playoffs? That's what ends up being the Achilles heel for a lot of these teams. And credit to the Lakers and Rob Pelinka. They said, you know what? We're not standing pat. We're going to go make trades. We're going to go make trades for Montrezl Harrell, Wesley Matthews, Dennis Schroeder, and they just signed Marc Gasol. Montrezl Harrell, how they pried him away from the Clippers and why the Clippers were willing to just let him go is unbeknownst to me. That was a massive, massive upgrade. To sign Montrezl Harrell, the reigning sixth man of the year, 18.4 points a game, second most points off the bench last season, the reigning sixth man of the year. Now you add him to the Lakers on a 2-year deal worth $19 million for the mid-level exception. He is the ideal energy guy that the Lakers need. He is someone who's going to keep the Lakers motivated to continue to play hard during those regular season games when you need LeBron James to take a rest, take a backseat when he doesn't want to give it his all. Montrezl Harrell can get you 20 easy. Can get you 20 easy. I remember I saw Montrezl Harrell playing at the Venice Basketball League a couple summers ago. I was announcing for that league. And you see him in person. This guy's a monster. Physical, rebounds aggressively, finishes around the rim, high energy usage guy. This is the ideal player that you want and that you need to possess. You need that guy that possesses that hunger. And Montrezl Harrell is an energy guy. He's a rim runner. He's elevated himself to finishing around the rim. He's not the best defender, but he can contest. And then again, you have Dennis Schroeder, 19 points per game last season. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, a guy who shoots 38% from the three-point line. And then here's the guy. They signed Wesley Matthews. I was so pumped for the Lakers signing Wesley Matthews. 1 year, $3.6 million. Take a listen to what I said last week about Wesley Matthews and whether or not the Lakers should go after him. Here is a guy that the Lakers should target. This is who they should target. Wesley Matthews just opted out. He's a free agent now, declined his $2.7 million option with the Bucks. He is a completely free agent right now, and the Lakers should try to acquire Wesley Matthews. If Danny Green is part of that Dennis Schroeder trade, which I believe he is, you need an ideal 3-and-D guy who you can sign for the cheap. Wesley Matthews shot 36% from the three-point line last year. He shoots a career 38.5% from the three-point line. 46 in defensive win shares last year. This is a guy who can D up 6'4", 220. He's stocky. He's built. He's not afraid of the moment, and he spreads the floor. That's what I said last week. That's who I said the Lakers should target last week. That was a huge upgrade for a guy who can fill in for Danny Green. Again, he can shoot the three ball extremely well. For his career, shoots at 38%. This is a guy that will be the perfect complement to a LeBron James. Absolutely perfect complement. I've always been interested in Wesley Matthews. I think he's a fantastic player. Then you re-sign KCP. You're able to re-sign him. 3 years, $40 million. Honestly, a pretty good deal given the value that he showed this Lakers team last year. Played big in the finals. And then somehow they were able to trade JaVale McGee to the Cleveland Cavaliers with a future second-round pick to clear up enough cap space to sign Marc Gasol. So yes, Dwight Howard left, but now you've got Marc Gasol as either the starting center or the backup center. That's an upgrade to me. Former Defensive Player of the Year in 2012, 2013. When he was on the floor last year, Raptors held opponents to 98 points per 100 possessions. So he's not the same stalwart as he used to be, but he's still someone that can D up extremely, extremely well. Not to mention in that trade with the Cavs. So they receive Jordan Bell and Alfonso McKinney. Now, Jordan Bell, they're going to pay him. It's a partially guaranteed salary. So they'll pay him about $580,000 and then waive him. And Alfonso McKinney is actually fully guaranteed, and he will have a starting spot on the Lakers roster. Or not, he won't be a starter, but he will be officially on the Lakers roster to start the season. I actually think Alfonso McKinney is a versatile forward. I thought he played pretty well with the Warriors, actually. So the fact that you're getting him for pretty much nothing, despite just dumping JaVale McGee, I actually think is pretty impressive. So I just love these moves that the Lakers have done. And again, you're swapping Danny Green, Rajon Rondo, Avery Bradley, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee for Dennis Schroeder, Wesley Matthews, Montrezl Harrell, and Marc Gasol. I like those upgrades a lot, personally. So let me transition to this. So the Sacramento Kings and the Milwaukee Bucks were in discussions to trade Bogdan Bogdanović from the Kings to the Bucks in a sign and trade. And now that whole trade's been botched. That whole trade's been vetoed. Because the way that a sign and trade works is the player has to agree to the contract to be traded to that other team. So when that trade collapsed, now you have the Atlanta Hawks swooping in Right time, right place. They make an offer for Bogdan Bogdanovic, 4 years, $72 million. They give him that offer sheet. And the Sacramento Kings now have, yesterday was 48 hours. Today it's probably 32 hours or whatever to match that offer sheet. If not, then Bogdanovic is going to go to the Hawks. I've never seen a botched trade and a blunder this bad ever in the NBA. I don't think I've ever seen it. The closest thing to a blunder like this was not even self-induced. It was the NBA imposing its will over the league because they owned the New Orleans Hornets at the time and they vetoed the Chris Paul trade to the Lakers. That's the closest thing that I've ever seen to this botched opportunity. The equivalent to this is what the Milwaukee Bucks just did. This is like you going on a date with a girl. You've been communicating with her for the past week. She's on board. You secure the date. She's down to go with you. You've got the time. You've got the place. You've got that all booked, time and the day. But then before consulting with her about what her dietary restrictions are, what kind of foods she likes, you go ahead and prematurely book a reservation to a restaurant that she can't stand and she doesn't want to eat at. And then you have the audacity to publicize it on social media that night, the night before. She gets wind of it and says, nope, I don't think so. Dumps your you-know-what on the side of the curb and goes out with someone else. That's what the Milwaukee Bucks did by botching this Bogdanovic trade. That's the equivalent. And this might cost them Giannis. This botched trade may cost the Milwaukee Bucks Giannis Antetokounmpo. It might. He may stay there and sign, but I feel like he would be more motivated to stay if they were able to close this deal done. And again, I don't know who leaked this information. If it was Bogdanovic's agent, I don't know if he's going to remain Bogdanovic's agent very long because clearly Bogdanovic wasn't on board with this. And if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, why would you run the risk of making this news public without actually getting 100% confirmation? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, this was the ultimate botched surgery right here. This was the ultimate botched surgery. I was just raving about Bogdanovic on Wednesday. I made the comparison to Ray Allen. I truly believe that. I stand by that. Bogdanovic shoots a career 37.4% three-point shooter. He's 6'6", maybe 6'5". I think he's 6'5". Ray Allen was 6'6". He moves well without the basketball. He can spot up in the corner. He hits the pull-up jumpers. He can put the ball on the floor and take it to the rim. He can create his own shot, and he's fearless. And he shoots with tremendous confidence, and he's the type of player that would perfectly complement Giannis, now Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton. He'd fit perfectly in this locker room, and now you lost him, and you might lose Giannis for what? Because you botched this trade? I was so excited for the Milwaukee Bucks to lock in this move. I really was. And that was just the ultimate botch surgery right there. I couldn't believe it. I was so disappointed that they blew that chance. They blew that chance right there. But other teams actually didn't blow their chances. And I definitely think that there's some winners and losers in free agency this year. I'm going to touch on 3 teams that I think came away in the winning column of free agency and 3 losers. Now, I'm just going to say right now, the Lakers are a team in my mind that was a winner from this past weekend, but I'm not going to include them in this since I just talked about them. But the first team that was a major winner is the Atlanta Hawks. major winner in this offseason. This is a team that finished second worst in the Eastern Conference last season at 20-47. I am predicting that this year they're going to make the playoffs. That's how bullish I am about the Atlanta Hawks. I think that the signings of Danilo Gallinari, 3 years, $61.5 million, a guy who averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists last year, shot the three ball 40.5% last year for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Gallinari is a proven scorer, a proven veteran who will provide a major boost for this bench. Trae Young, obviously, there averaged 30 points a game last year. Now you sign Rajon Rondo, who you can either pair with Trae Young as the starting two guard, I guess, or he can just play the backup role. We saw the kind of value that Rondo had in the finals and in the postseason last year. And now he signs 2 years, $15 million with the Atlanta Hawks, a proven leader, a veteran point guard, a guy who will change the culture in Atlanta. So that was a major signing. Now, if they even sign, they get to sign Bogdanović too, which by all accounts right now looks like until the Sacramento Kings match that offer sheet, which they haven't yet, it looks like he's headed towards Atlanta. You pair Trae Young with Bogdanović, and then you got John Collins, who averaged 21.5 points, 10 rebounds last season, missed several games last season due to suspensions. I think that he'll clean up his act. I think that he's going to play for longer stretches this year. I don't think he's going to miss as many games due to suspensions. He was fantastic. You acquired Jabari Parker, who averaged 15 points a game last year. I'm still high on DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, your two rookies from last season. They're going to improve. I like Kevin Huerter out of Maryland, 6'7". He's long, kind of a poor man's Klay Thompson. Shot the three ball 38% last season. This is an Atlanta Hawks team that I think is going to sneak in to the 8th seed this upcoming season. I truly believe it. And I think they were already on the verge of perhaps making the postseason this year just with their current roster. But this team will make the biggest jump in the Eastern Conference and maybe in the NBA. Now, I see them sneaking in to that 8th and final playoff spot. I do. I'm extremely bullish on them. Tremendous offseason for them. And then in addition, I've got the Miami Heat as a team that I thought did an excellent job constructing their roster once again. I think the signing of Avery Bradley was fantastic. I was a little disappointed that he didn't sign with the Lakers. He was the one guy I really wanted the Lakers to retain. And you get him 2 years, $11.6 million, a two-time NBA All-Defensive Team player, second team player in 2013, first team NBA All-Defensive Team in 2016. Avery Bradley shot the three ball 36% last year. And he fits the culture in Miami. His tenacity on defense. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. And his ability to guard opposing players, and especially the guards in the NBA in such a guard-driven league, is really valued right now. And I think he's going to fit in seamlessly with the culture. Apparently, they tried hard, the Heat, to recruit him last year. He ended up signing with the Lakers, but they were able to convince him to sign. Pat Riley was able to convince him to sign with the Heat this year. That was a tremendous pickup. And again, now you sign Mo Harkless for 1 year, $3.6 million. I think he's an underrated player, a stretch 4, maybe even a stretch 3, who's a very versatile defender. He didn't play particularly well last season, but I think he's someone that can contribute in a big way. And you re-sign Goran Dragic, 2 years, about $34-something million. You do lose Jay Crowder. I do think that is a big loss. And I'm going to talk about the team that he signed with that makes them one of my winners in the offseason. But you lose Derrick Jones Jr., but all that means is that Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson are going to get more minutes to play. They proved themselves last season. They proved that they can contribute. that they can be valued pieces. And I just love what the Miami Heat got going on right now. They finished 5th in the Eastern Conference, but those acquisitions, I think Avery Bradley was huge. I like Mo Harkless. They re-signed Goran Dragic. I like what the Miami Heat have done. And then finally, my third winner, again, excluding the Lakers, is the Phoenix Suns. You trade for Chris Paul. You acquire that third star to pair with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Again, Devin Booker averaged over 26 points per game last year. DeAndre Ayton was an 18-11 guy last season. And now you've got the floor general who for his career has averaged over 9.5 assists per game. And he's joining a team, the Phoenix Suns, that averaged the most assists per game last year in the NBA, 27 assists per game last year. And on top of that, you add another starter in Jay Crowder. So the Phoenix Suns are the ones that signed Jay Crowder, 3 years, $30 million, a guy who shot with Miami last year. Now, again, the entire season, he averaged out to 34% three-point shooter. But with the Miami Heat last season, about 2/3 of the way into the year, he signs with Miami. He shot the three ball 44.5%, Jay Crowder. With the Miami Heat, Jay Crowder shot the ball 44.5% from the three-point line. And now he's going to be the starter, probably the starting small forward with the Phoenix Suns. You just retained Dario Saric. I think the Phoenix Suns are going to make the playoffs next year. And now you add Jay Crowder and Chris Paul. I love what they've done. And I think, again, Jay Crowder is just a physical small forward. He's not afraid of anyone. He's gritty. He's unselfish. He's versatile. That's a great pickup for the Phoenix Suns. Now for the losers this offseason, I don't know what the Detroit Pistons are doing. I really don't. You trade the one bright, ascending young asset that you have in Luke Kennard. You trade him to the Clippers. What are you doing? What's the vision? What's the direction you're going in? You have an aging star in Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose. You already traded Andre Drummond. Just where are you going with this? The one bright spot in your organization to me was Luke Kennard. I actually really liked him as a shooting guard out of Duke. He still shoots the three ball really well, especially as a southpaw too. That's pretty unique. And you just trade him for nothing. And again, I understand that they signed Jeremy Grant from Denver. They signed Mason Plumlee from Denver. But what's the long-term vision here? They're kind of stuck in purgatory. They're not the worst team in the league where they're getting a number 1 overall pick, but they're not good enough to make the playoffs. And I just don't see the vision. I don't see the long-term plan from the Detroit Pistons. And you just let your one young, bright, ascending asset in Luke Kennard go. It makes no sense. And then similarly, the Sacramento Kings, I was disappointed with them. I was happy for De'Aaron Fox that he got his money. 5-year, $163 million max rookie extension with incentives that can go up to $195 million. The same deal that Jason Tatum signed, the same deal that Donovan Mitchell signed. But outside of that, yeah, you have Buddy Hield, but now you're going to lose Bogdanovich, assuming that you don't match that offer sheet. And it doesn't make any sense to me. What are you doing to improve your chances of making the playoffs? They missed the playoffs last year. They finished 12th in West Conference standings last year. Now you're losing Bogdanovich and you're not really adding anyone to your roster. How are you going to get better? The Phoenix Suns are going to be a better team. The Pelicans, another year, they might be a little bit better. Zion in his second season. Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball, they will probably be better. The Spurs are always going to be there. They missed the postseason. Portland had to sneak in at the end. Memphis is still there. What are you doing as the Kings to improve? You just let your second best player go for absolutely nothing. So I was disappointed in the Kings. Outside of signing De'Aaron Fox, I'm happy for him. And then third and finally, the Orlando Magic. Listen, there have been rumblings about them wanting to trade Aaron Gordon. Nikola Vucevic is still there. But what are you doing to improve your roster? They didn't make any, and they didn't make any changes. In my mind, they were already a bubble playoff team. They barely snuck in as the 8th seed last season, going 33-40. And now the Hawks, I think, have gone a lot better. The Charlotte Hornets have gone better. LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, they're going to be better. I just don't understand what the Magic are doing. They're just staying pat. They're standing pat. But why? You need to do things to improve your roster every year. And I just don't see what the long-term vision is at this very moment in time. I don't see it. And I like the Magic. I like some of the pieces that they have. I like Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz. He's surely not living up to his number one status, but he has resurrected his career a little bit. But you're thinking of trading Aaron Gordon. You're not making any moves. Where are you heading? What direction are you heading in? So I just don't really like what they did this offseason because they didn't do anything. They didn't make any improvements. Couple quick hitters, by the way, in the NBA, a couple shout outs. I like what the 76ers have done. I think Seth Curry and Danny Green are tremendous additions to this roster. Daryl Morey already doing a great job with them. I don't really understand why Dwight Howard chose to sign there. You're going to play backup minutes to Joel Embiid. Why do you want to be there? You could have been able to maybe start for the Lakers. The Lakers, I think, were wanting to re-sign him, and he decided to leave. So and not to mention he signs for 1 year, $2.6 million. You really don't think you could have gotten more money somewhere else? Not to mention the whole botched deleted tweet, that whole fiasco. So that didn't really make much sense to me. But I liked what they did. Again, happy for Gordon Hayward. He signed with the Hornets. Happy for Jason Tatum, signed the extension with the Celtics. And I like that they signed Tristan Thompson. That's a good pickup for them. Happy for Fred VanVleet. He got his money with the Toronto Raptors. Brooklyn Nets re-signing Joe Harris. That was a priority of theirs. And not to mention underrated, they were able to trade for Landry Shamet and pick him up. And I think for the money that they're paying for him, that's a really good bargain. It's a really good bargain for them. The Clippers, they re-signed Marcus Morris. I like that they signed Serge Ibaka. Did they really? And they obviously got Luke Kennard. They're marginally better, but I don't think they're substantially better. They didn't hurt their chances this offseason. I like Serge Ibaka a lot, but I don't think they made massive improvements. Now, they did what they could with their roster, so we'll see what happens with them. And then the interesting question is going to be with the New Orleans Pelicans. What are you going to do with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball? They're both eligible for max contracts. I think Brandon Ingram is more likely to receive that than Lonzo Ball, but it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see. Okay, final topic of the day, my Malkins moments. I've been excited about this. So, first of all, my first Malkins moment is Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes led his first game-winning drive under 2 minutes in a win for his career. Hard to imagine with all the accolades that he's achieved so far that this was his first game-winning drive in the last 2 minutes of a game, but it was. And they pulled off a major win on the road against the up-and-coming Las Vegas Raiders. They improved to 9-1. They're second place right now in the AFC, just behind the undefeated 10-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. Big win for them. And then finally, Pope Francis actually met with several NBA players, invited them to the Vatican to talk about social injustice and how they've been able to handle and create change and enact action and raise awareness to the social injustices that have been transpiring. And several representatives, including Kyle Korver, Sterling Brown, Jonathan Isaac, Anthony Tolliver, Marco Bellinelli, and then Michelle Roberts, the executive director of the Players Union, they flew to the Vatican City and they spoke with Pope Francis about the initiatives that they've been doing. And I love that moment. Major props to Pope Francis for his willingness to invite them over and to talk about these kinds of things. So that's my Malkin's Moments for you. Thank you so much for joining me. We had a packed show. I'm going to have another great show for you on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific is Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network on Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning and a happy Thanksgiving. But I'll see you guys on Wednesday.